Hi, I'm Charles Malki, biologist and plant expert with Ivy Organics 3-in-1 Tree Guard Paint, and today we're at the Theodore Payne Foundation in Sun Valley, California, where this particular nursery specializes exclusively in California native plants. And of all the videos we published this year, this is by far my most exciting one, as I'm sitting here today with the director of outreach for the Theodore Payne Foundation, and sitting next to me is Lisa Novick, and she's an accomplished published author as well as a blogger for the Huffington Post. I'll be putting all of those links down below so you can follow all of her work and all of her contributions she's done to not just the local community, but throughout the state of California and beyond in regards to educating people about the importance of growing native plants and bringing those into your garden to accomplish and support the biodiversity, and also to support and benefit all of the other plants and trees, your fruits and vegetables that you've got going very well for you in your own garden. And here we are, Lisa Novick.
Thank you so much, Charles. The Theodore Payne Foundation is a nonprofit native plant nursery and an education center. We grow native plants here year-round and sell them, and our mission is to get more native plants into the Southern California landscape and educate the public about why they're important. Not only for saving water, for using 80% less water than conventional landscapes, but also for supporting the ecosystem. Because everybody knows we're in a drought, but not everybody knows that our birds and butterfly numbers are going way down and that we need to do something to help them. And native plant gardening is something that you can do right where you live to help the health of the planet. Here at the Theodore Payne Foundation, we sell native plants year-round, and we give classes year-round for adults and kids. We have landscaping classes, maintenance classes, art classes, and we have a bookstore that carries over 100 different titles of books and seeds for all kinds of wildflowers and other trees and shrubs.
She's got a lot of education, a lot of classes that are being held here as well that you can participate in. And we had the privilege of actually having Lisa Novick at our last summer 2016 Garden Club meeting, where she educated us about the importance and the partnership and the things that we can do in working with the Theodore Payne Foundation with our own landscapes at home. I see over here to my left a red fairy duster, which is one of the California native plants, and there's so much activity on it. I've just got to show you, and we'll continue over there. So here we are next to the red fairy duster. It's loaded and covered with hundreds, if not thousands, of bees and butterflies and beetles, and there's so much life that's coming here. And Lisa just shared with me earlier today there was a family of quails that were eating the seeds that were coming off this plant earlier today. And if you want to see science to the max, it's happening right here on this red fairy. There's two little baby butterflies like making babies right now. Oh, we even witnessed the wedding today.
Yes, we have. I mean, that's
another placid. I know people want to know.
And then straight down from them, from those, they look like they might be square spotted blues. They're straight down there is a variegated checker spot directly below on a red flower with a bee. Direct, sort of up there is flying. Right there.
You getting all this? There's so much life in here, it's unbelievable. I don't think I've ever seen anything like this busy.
So I mean,
and beautiful.
One plant.
Yeah.
This is the one plant mantra. This plant is a marvelous plant because it not only blooms year-round, but it produces these seed pods from the flowers that make seeds for all the seed-eating birds. So that's why it was mentioned that if you come here early in the morning, there are quail all around the bottom of the plant, because the seed pods right here open up and they throw the seeds out, and then the quail just gather and eat the seeds right off the ground. So there's no need to buy bird seed.
So cool.
Because it's in the plant. Now, if you look at this plant, there are bees, the European honeybee as well as the native bees that are just all over the plant. And not only are there bees, there are two kinds of butterflies. It looks like a square spotted blue and a variegated kind of checker spot. And those butterflies can nectar here year-round. But all butterflies need a specific forage plant for their young. So a caterpillar needs a specific food for it to eat. So this is the great nectar food for the adults, but then if you look at what caterpillars need, you'll find that they all have their ecological niche.
That's wonderful. And actually just right here to my right, there's two butterflies that are actually mating right here. I don't know if you can zoom in and see it, but hopefully you'll be able to include this with the video. Is just the diversity and the number of butterflies that are in here between grays and blues and oranges, and there's just so many butterflies in here. It's just phenomenal. Butterflies I've never seen before. And why is that? Why are there so many more butterflies here than I've ever seen in my garden?
Well,
like I've got lemon trees that are in bloom, and I've got all these other different plants that are all blooming. How come these guys don't come out and visit it?
There were two mating variegated checker spots
I saw that right below
there.
us.
Well, the butterflies are attracted to this plant, as are the native bees, because that's what they co-evolved with. I mean, we have oak fossils of our native oaks that are 56 million years old. So California native plants have been here for tens of thousands to millions of years. And so in the insects and the animals' genes is encoded the shape and look of the plant foods, the flowers and the seeds that they need in order to live. And so when you plant a native plant, that's what they are looking for, and that's what they recognize as food. And then not only is it just that they recognize it as food, it's that in many cases the insects can't eat anything but the native because they don't have the stomach enzymes to eat anything else, and that's because of co-evolution. So when you plant a native, the birds, the butterflies, they will find you because that's what they must have in order to live. So you get 80% water savings and support of the ecosystem, and then all the ecosystem types of benefits that come with it, like a higher yield for your fruit trees and your vegetable gardens. And then you get watershed protection because with natives you don't need any fertilizers, soil amendments, or pesticides. So the benefits are huge for watershed health, for resilience, and for having an LA and a state that has its natural history intact and has the beauty of our natural heritage intact.
That's a lot of great points. So if you plant some California natives, you don't need to use pesticides, you don't need to fertilize them, you don't need to do much watering, and you get all of this diversity that supports your local community of insects and birds and that whole food chain of life that lives around us and that existed before we ever came. So if I go and I plant one of these California natives in my garden, and I know you said they find it, but like, how am I gonna get these California native butterflies that are like so beautiful, and these guys are still, you know,
Are they still locked
they're
together?
still courting over here.
They're more than courting.
But I haven't seen this butterfly. Like, how is he going to go and find my California native plants that I introduce into my garden? How do I bring them over? And like, from what distances can they smell and get attracted to these plants?
Well, the small butterflies they've found can fly up to a couple of miles. They locate the scent of a plant by their antenna. And so square-spotted blues, for instance, need buckwheat as a forage plant. And so they will test the wind with their antenna to locate the plant, and they can fly up to a couple of miles to find it. And then once they get there, they taste it with their feet, and then they lay their eggs on the blossoms. So, you know, think of it. If people all across the state were to plant just a couple of native plants in their garden, it would be like making islands that the insects and the birds and the animals could use as islands to go from garden to garden, and we could spread birds and butterflies throughout the state, even in the middle of our cities.
So cool. So cool. So it really only takes like one California native. If I did my part and planted one, and my neighbor had that one, those would be the islands that will allow these butterflies to go from home to home and have what otherwise existed before we ever came.
Right.
And put our homes right on top of their native plants.
So if you want to really create a habitat garden that attracts the butterflies and the birds, it's best to plant several of one species with one another, because it's easier for the butterflies to smell the leaf signature of the plant when you've got about 3 or more all clumped in like an arc or a drift. One plant is hard for a butterfly to find for the leaf food, but if you had, say, 3 of the buckwheats near a fairy duster, you would have all the nectar the adults needed and all the leaf forage food for the babies.
So I've been spending the last few years educating within my community and other garden clubs that I get invited to discuss plants, but something I took upon myself is what I call Project Monarch Butterfly. There's proven studies and scientists around the world that are working on getting the monarch butterfly on the endangered species list, as their populations have been devastated. There's a lot of reasons and causes that I don't want to get into right now, but one of them being, again, we've taken their fruit sources away, and there's a lot of other reasons behind it as well, again, that I don't want to get into. But I want to focus on the point that the monarch butterflies are endangered in everybody in the country, and as I've been teaching these classes, the majority of the people are aware of this. But is it the only butterfly that's on the brink of extinction, or are there other issues and other butterflies that we should be concerned about as well, in addition to the monarch butterfly?
There are about 160 types of butterflies in the southern half of our state, and many of them are endangered. And so, yes, we should be very concerned about the monarchs and do everything we can to help them. But in addition, we should be planting our buckwheat for many of our blue species. We should be planting all the caterpillar forage foods of the butterflies in our local area, because that will help maintain the populations. And here's the reason why butterflies are so important. They not only bring life and movement to our gardens, but caterpillars are the main food of the baby birds. It takes 100 to 150 of the caterpillars to feed one finch-sized baby bird from the time it hatches until the time it fledges about 17 days later.
That's remarkable.
So if you plant the native plant, you feed the caterpillars that feed the baby birds, and then you get natural pest control on your fruit trees or your conventional edibles. So everything works together beautifully.
So beautifully said. I know you wanted to point out some plants over there in the corner, and I'm going to meet you back over here at the milkweed that's behind me, so we can discuss that with our audience. If I can give you the mic here.
Okay, thank you.
If you'd like to share another plant, and then I'll meet you back here.
Okay, great.
Ooh. Where are we heading next?
We're just right here.
2 steps over, and then we're going to take 4 steps back.
My glasses are fogging up from the sun. This is Alkali Sacaton grass, and it's one of our many native bunch grasses. It's what people should be planting in their yards for this beautiful bunch grass look that sort of gives a beautiful different leaf type compared to other shrubs and ground covers. The seed heads make wonderful food for the birds, and this grass is exactly the kind of thing that you want to plant instead of the fountain grass, which is spreading into our wildlands and is a fire hazard, and then crowds out the native plants and doesn't provide food for our insects and animals.
So here we are now in another part of the garden. I'm right in between the rush milkweed, and then the Indian mallow is just in front of me, beautifully colored in these beautiful yellow flowers. It's covered in bees and butterflies, and it's going into seed. But take a look at how beautiful that color is and the contrast you can have with the yellows that we saw here, and then the red fairy duster that we saw over there. And then to my right, unfortunately, the milkweed's not in bloom right now, not attracting too many butterflies or caterpillars, but it is going into seeding right now. It's got these pods that are covered all over it that are going to produce thousands and if not millions of seeds that will then create the next generation that will be used to sell to its customers that come and visit this garden, as well as to continuously feed the rest of the garden so people can see what they actually do here naturally. What else can you share with us here?
This Indian mallow is a marvelous plant because, like the red fairy duster, it blooms year-round. On average, when you establish your native plants, you're going to be watering about once a week if you have faster draining soil, slightly less than once a week if you have slow draining soil like clay. So for the first year, water once a week on average. Give each plant about three gallons of water so it gets a good deep root establishment. And then after the plant is established through the first 2 summers, then you start to taper off the deep waterings. And then once this plant is established, eventually after the 2nd year, it should be able to survive just on rainfall in the winter and then a deep watering every 3 to 4 weeks or so in the summer. Now, this plant is a great plant, especially for kids' gardens, because the leaves are this velvety kind of texture with a sawtooth edge. And
Very cool.
then the crowns of seeds are there for the birds to just alight on the stems and then eat the seeds right out of the seed pods. So if you have fairy duster and Indian mallow in your garden, you're going to have life and movement year-round.
It does look just like that. I'm looking at these cups, and when you zoom in later on, you'll actually see these cups with seeds just ready to feed the birds that want to come and visit this Indian mallow and, and have its breakfast, lunch, or dinner among all these other insects that are pollinating the plant. I see some other colors behind you as well, a lot more yellow flowers that seem to be different. What are those plants?
That's a desert marigold, and like the Indian mallow, all these self-sow really well. So for a school garden, for instance, this is a great way to get native plants into the community, because this one Indian mallow will make dozens and dozens of baby plants, and then you can give those away at school fundraisers or just to get them into the community to bring life back into the city and the suburbs.
It's very neat. You mentioned another thing about watering, and
Right.
people, when it comes to native plants, think they don't need water. If they're native, then they're used to just, that one rain that we get here in LA per year. But does native mean no water? And is there any such thing as plants that can actually thrive without water?
Well, there are plants in the Atacama Desert in Chile that survive just on fog drip. But our California native plants need water. And if you look at the native plants that survive in the wild, they're the natives that grew up from seed during a good rain year. So they had a good winter's rain and maybe 2 or 3 in succession. So if you were to go up into the hills now, at the end of this 5th year of the worst drought in our recorded history, you'd see that many of the baby natives up in the wildlands did not make it through the summer because there just wasn't enough moisture in the soil for them to get a deep enough root establishment and get established. So what a gardener is trying to do at home is mimic an El Nino winter, or 2 in succession, to get a good deep root establishment so that that baby grows up into being a strong adult plant and can make it on its own with just a couple of supplemental waterings during the dry season.
So we still need to help out the plants somewhat.
Absolutely.
But water saving wise, there's still a lot of water that we're saving compared to planting something else we can pick up at the local box store.
Absolutely. Natives use 80% less water on average than non-native plants. 80% less.
Wonderful.
And the reason why that is so important is that it looks like we're going into a mega drought. California has had droughts throughout its history. 37 of the last 40 centuries were dry. And even in the so-called wet years, we had decades of drought. And so during the 20th century, we had drought in the 30s, the 50s, the 70s, and the late 80s. And that was considered a wet time. So these wet periods do not come that often, and they are the anomaly, and we should be thinking of drought as normal, because it is.
Thanks, Lisa. I noticed that there's a lot of natural hillside over here. I want to share with you viewers what's going on naturally in our hillsides here in Los Angeles. Come and follow me. Take those beautiful blooms. All of the pollinators. And then take a look at these seed cups over here. And these seed cups are where the birds can just pick the seeds right out of those cups you get a high, dense, nutrient rich meal. The same plants that have existed here for millions of years. And this here, the Rush milkweed, an excellent variety to consider in your California native landscape. Take a look at those seed pods. And I was able to find a bloom as well. If you take a look over here, take a look at how simple those flowers are. A lot different than the tropical milkweed, which are not supposed to be planted in California and are the #1 variety that are being sold in nurseries across California, if not across the country. But this here is the California native Rush milkweed.